Hi, this is Steve from 3D-Hub. This lesson is a follow-on from the previous lesson, really. In the previous lesson, we learned how to create some basic interaction within some of the 3D-Hub lessons. This was using the action sets and also what we call positional blends. What we're going to do here is take that slightly further, and we're going to use rotational blends, and we're going to use toggle buttons, whereas before we just use an ordinary button. This will have two states and you'll be able to toggle between the two. So the first thing we do is open up PowerPoint, and again it's to install the FXP file containing your lesson. So you'll be given all of these FXP files, which just contain, as I said, all the assets, the PowerPoint, the insert scenes, all ready to take from one machine to another. So we're just going to open this up, and you can see here this is the similar 3D assets that we had on the previous lesson. So we've got the torus, and in the middle there we've got the rotating pyramid. The only difference is if we go to the FX edit and look at it in full screen, obviously we can still rotate it and we still have the ability to move the position of the pyramid. We also have this button here. When we click on it, it will start to rotate the torus, and again we can still obviously interact and still move the pyramid around, and we can pause the torus. And as you can see here, when we press the play button, the torus starts to spin, and when we hit the pause button, it will stop. So the buttons also toggle as well. So these are just straightforward buttons, and this is what we call a toggle button. So it has two states: state 1, which is play, and state 2, which is the pause. Okay, now let's see how we create that from scratch. So if we just come out of that. Okay, so if we open up 3D Studio Max and we go to the lesson that's applied to you, the lesson 2 Max file, you'll see in the lesson, if I zoom in there, the torus that we had before, which is static in lesson 1, the rotating pyramid, and also the positional blends, which were these dummies which were used to pull the pyramid into positions 1, position 2 and the initial position. Now this Max scene also has two new dummies, one that's called torus still and the other one that's just called torus spin. Now if we just open up the Max script and open up the action set area of the Max script dialog box and get action set properties, you'll see here that this one, whereas before we had positional clip attributes, this has the rotational clip attribute ticked, and the same for the other one. So if we go to the first one, this one's called torus spin, and as you can see here we've called the action set torus spin as well, and the clip target is the torus. So the object within the scene that we're trying to have influence over is the torus 01. And as you can see here, what we're trying to do is blend the rotation of that torus to the rotational state, as it were, of this dummy. Now if we interrogate what the rotational state is in the curve editor, you can see here that on the Z axis of its rotation it has two keyframes which are both set to 3600 degrees. And you'll also notice that obviously when we scrub the scrub bar in Max, this doesn't actually rotate. So what we're trying to achieve here is we're trying to pull the torus into a rotational state of 3600 degrees over the blend time of 30 seconds. So wherever the torus is in its rotation, as soon as we activate the action set torus spin, the torus will now try and get to a rotational state of 3600 degrees over 30 seconds. If we wanted this to happen a lot quicker, you'd just reduce the blend time in seconds. Now the torus still dummy you can see if we get the current action set properties, again has the rotational clip attribute. Again, it uses the blends. It has relative blends selected and it has a blend time of 0 seconds. And equally, if we go down to the curve editor, you'll notice here that its keyframes are set to 0 degrees. So this dummy is trying to drag the torus to 0 degrees over the time period of 0 seconds. So effectively it will stop the torus from spinning. Now we use the relative blending radio button here because what we're trying to do is, if the torus was spinning around and we click this action set to bring it to a standstill, it would want to jump all the way back to 0 degrees over 0 seconds. So you'd get a massive flick, as it were, from, if the torus was had spun around to 180 degrees, it would suddenly spin back to 0 degrees over the period of 0 seconds. By making sure we use relative blending, it's going to 0 degrees based on its relative position. So if its current position was 183 degrees and then you actioned that action set, it would stop dead where it is because it's relative to its current position. Okay, so back into PowerPoint. The first thing we're going to do is delete the button that caused the torus to spin and stop, so we can reintroduce it and I can show you how the action sets are applied to it. So again, we go back to slide options, and again the dynamic UI controls dialog box at the bottom here. One of the options is create a toggle, which is what we want to do. We're going to give the toggle control ID, which is simply just its name, so we're going to call it spin still, and we're going to go and find the bitmap file that we wish to use for it. And this one we're going to use is the play and pause UI toggle PNG, and again insert the toggle. Again, we're not actually going to put link the commands to the button yet. We'll do that in the interactive FX edit mode. So we put the button in, we simply go to FX edit, click on FX, which sends it to full screen, and again we're back into our authoring mode where we can interact with the objects in the scene. Now what you'll notice straight away is the button, when we opened up the screen, is in its pause state, and if you click on it, it will turn to play and back to pause. Obviously we've not actually given it a command yet, so it's not interacting with the torus, but we have noticed that the initial state of that button is incorrect. So if we hold control down and click on it, it brings up the UI authoring for the toggle button, and at the top here you've got two radio buttons for its initial state. So the initial state, or the first time we see the button, currently is its one state, and what we want it to be is the second state, so that when the first time we see the button it has a play symbol on it and not the pause. Now what we'll do is we'll update that button, hit escape, come out of that and go back in, and you can see here now the initial state is the play button, which is what we want it to be first of all, because we want to press that to make it spin. So now if we hold control down and open it up again, we're going to give the button some commands. Now if you remember, the first state, or the first time we see the button, it's in state 2, which is the play state, so therefore on state 2 we want to give it the command to spin. So we simply add torus spin from the list of action sets from within Studio Max, and then state 1, which if you remember was the pause, if we click on that, retrieve the action set command list from the 3D Studio Max, and we want that to be torus still. Click OK and update the toggle button. Now all we've done now is we still have the button and we still have its two states, and we've linked it to the torus. So if I press play, the torus spins, and if I press pause, it stops. There we go. So that's pretty much it for lesson 2. That was an introduction into using the toggle buttons and also the rotational blends.